When we talk about the nice girl or trap, it usually doesn't start in adulthood. It starts much earlier. A little girl is praised when she's polite, when she keeps quiet, when she shares even when she doesn't want to, when she smiles even if she's hurting inside. And over time, that little girl learns something dangerous. She learns that being agreeable earns approval, while being honest risks rejection. She grows up thinking that her value comes from how comfortable she makes everyone else feel. That's how the trap begins. It feels safe at first, doesn't it? Or you avoid conflict. You keep relationships smooth. You're the one everyone describes as so sweet or so easy to get along with, but beneath the surface, that niceness becomes a mask. You learn to hide your true opinions, your real feelings, your actual desires, because you don't want to rock the boat. And little by little, you forget what your own voice even sounds like. I remember speaking with a young woman who told me she never once disagreed with her friends, not once. She thought she was doing the right thing by always going along with the group, but in truth, she was shrinking. She wasn't living as herself, she was living as a shadow of everyone else. That's what the nice girl at trap does. It makes you believe that harmony is more important than authenticity, that being liked is more valuable than being real. The enemy loves this lie, because if he can convince you to play small, he doesn't have to fight you head on. If he can get you to silence yourself, he doesn't have to silence you. If he can train you to confuse compliance with kindness, then he's already dimmed the light God placed in you. The trap looks harmless. It looks gentle, but it's actually a slow suffocation of your spirit. The cost of always being nice is far greater than most people realize. At first, it feels like you're keeping peace, like you're holding relationships together, like you're doing the noble thing by putting yourself last. But slowly, without even noticing, you begin to lose pieces of yourself. Every time you bite back words you long to say, every time you agree when your heart is screaming no, every time you put on a smile when you're weary inside, you're giving away fragments of your soul. And after years of living this way, you can look in the mirror and barely recognize the woman staring back. I once knew a woman who was known by everyone as dependable, gentle, always available. She never turned anyone down. She never disappointed anyone. People leaned on her constantly, and she never complained. But in the quiet of her own home, she admitted to me that she was exhausted, resentful, and empty. She told me she didn't know what her own dreams were anymore because she had spent her whole life making sure everyone else's dreams came true. That is the silent price of being too nice. It drains you dry while everyone else feels full. The heartbreaking part is that society often applauds this. People will call you selfless, noble, even saintly, while you are secretly falling apart. But God did not create you to live as a shell of yourself for the sake of everyone else's comfort. Jesus said, love your neighbor as yourself. But many of us skip over that second part, as yourself. If you neglect yourself in the name of love, it isn't love at all. It's fear disguised as virtue. When you live only to keep others happy, you don't just lose energy, you lose clarity, direction, and joy. Your voice begins to tremble when it should be steady. Your heart begins to shrink when it should be expanding. And your God-given purpose starts to fade into the background of other people's agendas. That's the devastating cost of always being nice. It doesn't just rob you of rest, it robs you of the fullness of life you were meant to live. There comes a moment when you have to pause and ask yourself, am I truly being kind, or am I just trying to please? Because kindness and people-pleasing might look the same on the outside, but they are born from very different places. Kindness comes from strength. It's an overflow of love that isn't afraid to be honest, even when honesty is hard. People-pleasing, on the other hand, comes from fear. The fear of being disliked, of disappointing someone, of standing out as different. One liberates you, the other chains you. I remember a story of a woman at work who was constantly covering extra shifts. Everyone thought she was the kindest person in the office, always willing to help. But deep inside, she admitted she didn't want to do it. She just couldn't bring herself to say no. That wasn't kindness, that was people-pleasing. True kindness would have been helping when she genuinely could, but also having the courage to say, I'm not able this time without guilt. Kindness does not erase your boundaries. It works within them. People-pleasing erases them altogether. Kindness speaks truth with compassion, even if it makes others uncomfortable. People-pleasing tells half-truths or stays silent just to keep everyone happy. Kindness looks at someone and says, I care about you enough to be honest. People-pleasing says, I care about myself too little to risk your disapproval. Can you feel the difference? And here's the danger. When we confuse the two, we start to believe that being exhausted, overlooked, and taken advantage of is somehow holy. But God never called you to carry burdens He didn't assign you. Jesus Himself was kind, but He was never a people pleaser. He spoke truth to the Pharisees. He set boundaries when crowds pressed in on Him, and He walked away when it wasn't His time. If the Son of God refused to live under the tyranny of pleasing people, why should you? The shift comes when you decide your worth is not tied to everyone else's approval. That's when kindness begins to flow out of you freely, because it is no longer rooted in fear, but in love for God, love for others, and yes, love for yourself. The courage to set boundaries is one of the most powerful acts of love you can practice, and yet it is often the one we resist the most. Why? Because boundaries are misunderstood. Many believe that drawing a line is selfish, unkind, or even unspiritual. But in truth, boundaries are not walls that shut people out. They are doors that allow relationships to flourish in honesty and respect. Without them, love becomes one-sided. Trust erodes and resentment grows silently in the heart. I remember speaking with a mother who carried the weight of everyone's needs on her shoulder. Her children, her extended family, even her coworkers knew she was the one who would always say yes. But one day, her health collapsed. The stress and exhaustion had caught up with her, and she realized something startling. By never setting boundaries, she wasn't actually serving people well. She was enabling them to take without learning to give. It wasn't love, it was a slow self-destruction. Boundaries are not about rejection, they are about protection. Just as a shepherd guards the sheepfold with a gate, you are called to guard the life God entrusted to you. Saying no when you are at your limit is not cruelty, it is wisdom. It is an act of stewardship over your time, your body, and your spirit. And here's the beautiful truth. When you set boundaries, you actually give people the chance to experience the real you, the honest you, not the version of yourself that is stretched thin and silently resentful. Think about Jesus again. He healed multitudes, but He also withdrew to the mountains to pray. He loved deeply, but He didn't allow everyone unlimited access to Him. He had the 12, the 3 in moments where He stood alone with the Father. That is not weakness, that is strength. And if Christ Himself practiced boundaries, then we too must learn that courage. It takes bravery to speak a firm no, to walk away from manipulative expectations, to stop apologizing for protecting your peace. At first, people may not understand. They may even resist because they've grown comfortable with your constant yes. But with time, your boundaries teach others how to value you, and more importantly, they remind you that your worth has never depended on overextending yourself. Living with strength, not just niceness, is about stepping fully into the woman God created you to be: bold, wise, compassionate, and unafraid of your own voice. Niceness alone will keep you small. Strength will set you free. Niceness says, I'll go along so no one gets upset. Strength says, I will walk in truth even if it makes others uncomfortable. Niceness blends in. Strength stands out. Niceness keeps peace on the surface. Strength makes peace that lasts. I remember once hearing about a woman who finally found her strength after years of being labeled the sweet one. She was the kind who never stirred conflict, who always smiled politely, who swallowed her own needs so others could shine. But when she began to reclaim her strength, something incredible happened. Her relationships didn't fall apart. They actually became healthier. People began to respect her words because they were finally coming from a place of authenticity, not obligation. She wasn't just liked, she was valued. She was valued. That is the difference strength makes. Strength is not about becoming hard, bitter, or unkind. It is not about turning into someone unrecognizable. True strength is quiet, steady, and deeply rooted in love. It's the strength of a tree planted by streams of water, firm when the winds blow, fruitful in its season, alive in every fiber. This is the kind of woman the world needs today, not one who erases herself to fit in, but one who lives boldly, who can extend kindness without fear, who can say yes with joy and no with conviction. When you embrace that strength, you stop asking for permission to be who you are. You stop apologizing for taking up space. You stop measuring your worth by how many people approve of you. Instead, you begin to live in alignment with your God-given identity. And that, my friends, is far more powerful than being nice. That is the kind of life that inspires others to rise, the kind of presence that shifts rooms, the kind of testimony that leaves a legacy. So, my friends, we have walked through the journey of what it means to stop being the nice girl, to step out of the trap, to count the cost, to discern between kindness and people-pleasing, to set boundaries with courage, and to finally live in strength, not just surface-level sweetness. And now the question rests with you. Will you keep living small, or will you rise into the fullness of who God has called you to be? You see, life is too short to waste in constant approval seeking. Your days are too precious to be spent bending until you break. And your calling is far too sacred to be silenced by the fear of disappointing others. The world does not need more women who are simply agreeable. It needs women who are authentic, who are brave, who carry kindness in one hand and truth in the other. It needs women who know how to stand tall, like that rose with both its petals and its thorns. I want you to imagine the impact if every woman here today walked out with a renewed resolve, not to be nice, but to be real. Imagine homes filled with honest love, workplaces where women's voices are strong, communities where boundaries are honored, and a world where kindness is rooted in courage, not fear. That is the kind of transformation that begins not with someone else, but with you. So I urge you, stop apologizing for your strength. Stop dimming your light so others won't feel threatened. Stop erasing yourself in the name of being a nice. Instead, rise up, speak boldly, love deeply, live freely, and let your life bear witness to this truth. You were never called to be merely nice. You were called to be powerful, purposeful, and unshakably real. Now go and live it.